Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast. My name is James Dickson, wishing you a very good morning, afternoon, or evening indeed, whenever or wherever you are tuning into today's podcast from. The podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Engage, powered by D2I Systems, winner of Best Event Management Platform at the 2017 Event Technology Awards. To learn how Engage can make your business more profitable, visit d2isystems.com/engage. A very good evening to everybody. Well, it's good evening for me at the moment, and a very good evening to our guest on today's podcast. Emma Stokes is the Managing Director for Development and Infrastructure at Smarter Shows. Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Hi, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. Great to have you on the show. For our podcast followers who may not have come across Smarter Shows before, this is a company that has grown, as I understand it, very rapidly over the 8 years or so of its existence. Tell us, give us a bit of background, first of all, into the company, Emma.
Sure. Well, I joined the company right at the beginning. There was 3 of us sat in a very small serviced office at the top of a high tower block in Brighton. And 8 years later, we're now 42, I think, at last count. And we feel probably grown up at this point. It feel rather in the beginning days that we were sort of making it up as we go along. There was a lot of learning and a lot of getting stuck into things that weren't necessarily part of your fine job description or responsibility, but we've got defined departments now, and we really feel that we're producing events right up there with the best of them.
How and why did the company begin? As event organisers, was there an idea for an event that required a company to deliver that, or was there the idea to launch a company and then to decide where you would look to explore event opportunities?
I think it was a combination of both, actually. So the business owner and the CEO, James Reader, he worked for a long time at a company called UKI Media and Events in Dorking, who produce events in quite a number of the similar industries to us. So he spent a long time there, and he was very close to the chairman and CEO of that company, Tony Robinson. And Tony actually worked in partnership with James to set up Smarter Shows. And that was backed by a great idea to launch an event into battery technology co-located with electric and hybrid vehicle technology as a really emerging marketplace and a high growth industry sector.
Does the company name Smarter Shows, does that reference the type of shows that you're actually delivering, or was there an element of how you were wanting to deliver those shows when you set out as a company, that you wanted them to just be a little bit smarter than perhaps other experiences you'd had of organising events before?
I think it's representative of some of the values that we hold close to our hearts. I really genuinely think that part of what's unique about Smarter Shows is that two things really. We deliver very high value events, I believe, and we do that through being able to have quite a personal approach and really listen to the communities that we serve. So our exhibitors and our attendees really get to grips with understanding what really matters to them and what really is going to make something that much more valuable. And it's not often that you can say that you can have that kind of personal approach whereby we will, very quickly decide that we need to do a focus group of conversations or telephone conversations or face-to-face meetings to understand that community a lot better. So that's one thing, and being able to sort of then quickly change the direction of one of our events or campaigns to be more relevant. I think it's those things that mean that we're working smarter,
Sure.
which we've got to be able to compete with the big guns who have the economies of scales and so forth. We've got to really focus on what matters.
If I'm right in saying so, a lot of your events, whether they be conferences or exhibitions, are relevant to the manufacturing and the engineering sectors. Now, these are very, very highly specialised industries, and I've always found and always sort of slightly giggled at the scenario presented to event organisers, which is they've got to know their own jobs inside out and back to front as an event organiser. But when you're delivering an event for such specialised industries, the industries themselves expect you to know everything about them as well, so that you can deliver the best possible show and to communicate with them at a level that they understand and they accept that you know what you're talking about. How difficult is that to balance the art of being an event organizer and also to be able to understand these industries that you're servicing?
Well, yeah, you've hit the nail upon the head. It is a balancing act, and I think generally speaking, we don't purport to be industry experts, and I really don't want to do a disservice to some of the great talent we've got here, and particularly our conference producers and the event directors. Some of them really have over the years got to know their industries incredibly well, but that's not obviously the starting point. We work in collaboration with industries, so that we don't purport to know what motivates them and what their needs are. You know, we create advisory boards, we create groups of friendlies who will drive the direction of the show. You know, we're event experts at the end of the day, and so we can deliver what they need, but they need to tell us that, and we wouldn't like to assume that we know best.
When the company set out, as you said, you know, you joined at the start 8 years ago. There were 3 of you. What was the first show that came to fruition and that you were able to deliver under the Smarter Shows brand? So
that was the battery show, which was the idea that James initiated the company with. So the battery show in the US, in America, and in Detroit. Which was all about advanced battery technologies, driven obviously in large part by the electric vehicle trend, but also all sorts of different battery technologies and formats for all sorts of different applications. So that's how we started out. We're 6 or 7 events annually now, and we've carved quite a sort of a portfolio that fits together nicely in this advanced manufacturing space. There have been some red herrings along the way, obviously, events that haven't quite worked out, and they tend to be some stuff that's outside of that core portfolio. So we feel like we've found our niche now, and we like to do things for these communities.
Sure. Just going back to something that you just said there, am I right in saying then that your first show, the first event that you delivered, was in Detroit?
That's right, yes.
So you didn't make things easy for yourself, really, by setting up in a small office in Brighton and then.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because we've never actually ever run an event in the UK, and
really,
and that's quite difficult for me to say, actually, because I would really love to do an event in the UK, and of course, advanced manufacturing and engineering is a sector that I feel the UK really delivers well in, and so I really hope to be able to make that a not true statement very soon. But it's just the way it's happened. The US, we find for launching shows, and we are in the business of launching shows, which is quite unique in our marketplace. There's a lot of acquisitions, you know, going on.
Sure, yeah.
They make the conditions for launching shows in the US, the costs of venues and so forth, makes it easier to do so. And therefore our success in Europe has been through cloning shows that we've launched in the US mainly, but absolutely, now that we've really created a solid base for ourselves, I think we can take a few more risks, and the UK is certainly on my radar.
And it does sound, I suppose, like, to a lot of people, they think, oh, crikey, you know, entertaining a show that's thousands and thousands of miles away. When event organisers think about the amount of just site visits, simple things like just thinking, right, I need to go and look at the site again next week to measure out this area or to plan what I'm going to put in that area. I mean, how difficult is it for you to execute an event, and a large scale event where everything's got to be meticulously planned as to how it will fit into any given area, when you don't have the luxury of just being able to go to site?
Well, yeah, it's certainly challenging at times. I mean, time differences even can make it difficult. And, you know, we've got a very flexible working culture here, whereby, you know, and particularly when we're talking about the West Coast, you know, they're not really open for business until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. We've we started with a very strong support network through James's, background experience, and he lived in the US for some time, so he had a lot of good contacts there.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of good partners that help us out and help us manage those difficulties by acting on our behalf and being our sort of advocates and our men on the ground. But really, it's we've got quite a young sort of working culture here, people who like to travel and they thrive on getting to grips with those other markets. So to be honest, I think that's been something that people have really relished here, as opposed to something that has been that much of an obstacle.
Sure. You mentioned, going back to something you mentioned about interaction and working with industries and trade sectors, and I guess that extends to working with media outlets that are specialists in certain industries and trade associations that are specialists to certain industries. Do you think that there is an underutilization by other B2B event organisers of either trade associations or media outlets that are available within certain industries as a means to understand what they could and should be delivering as a show?
Sorry, I'm just turning my phone down. Oh gosh, it's difficult for me to cast aspersions like that because I don't know, in recent years how effective they're being at that. I can tell from my own experience within Smarter Shows that we found it invaluable to work with associations and partners in this way to understand the industry more. I mean, these guys, their sort of raison d'etre is to serve their communities, and so there's a valuable reason for us to work together. They're not event experts often, and so there's quite a good synergy of motivations there. A lot of the best events that I've seen come up have come from a person who's within that industry and has spotted a need that isn't being served, rather than so that's a massive resource to be utilized. And I don't know how well other companies are utilizing it, and I dare say there's more to be done, but we certainly have found it's one of our first things when we look at launching an event. We talk to the industry and we understand in as much detail as possible who needs to be involved for us to properly be serving that community.
Sure, absolutely. Rewinding a little bit again, and you mentioned that you're up to now delivering, is it 7 shows internationally, 6 or 7 shows internationally every year?
That's right, yeah.
You're going back to when the company was formed 8 years ago. Give or take, you're looking at adding 1 new show for every year you've been around, which for a relatively small company to begin with is a big undertaking. You mentioned at the start that there was an element of making it up as you go along, or what it felt like was making it up as you go along. But inevitably, you must have had a plan as a company as to how you would accomplish this. You don't expand from where you were to where you are now without having a clear idea of how you're going to cope with that from a staffing point of view, from an infrastructure point of view, from a logistical point of view.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm probably going to regret making that statement now, and that's doing a massive disservice to the people that were there at the beginning. I guess what I meant by that is that we were 3 people doing the jobs of, say, 15.
Sure.
And so we were having to dip into disciplines that we weren't necessarily experienced in. And obviously, when you're launching an event, that's quite a unique proposition, and there is a lot of sort of concept selling and engaging people into something that hasn't taken place yet, which is quite a skill set. But James, our CEO, really drove the business in those first early stages, and he really had a vision for, with all of this wealth of experience that he brought with him from UKI Media and Events, and he also worked at Reed Exhibitions, to really do things, to focus on what really matters in events and not be clouded by all of the stuff that's ancillary to that really doesn't matter. It's about serving the communities at the end of the day, and how do we do that better? We need to stay small and agile and listen. And not be so arrogant as to think that there's a one-size-fits-all template.
That's interesting. Small but particularly agile. The ability to move very quickly, and I guess part of that agility aspect would be to develop relationships very, very quickly. If you're based in the UK and you are working on international events regularly, and perhaps with a desire to launch even more, I guess as a company and as individuals, you have to have the ability to develop new relationships very, very quickly.
Yes, and again, this is something that James Reader did incredibly well and still does incredibly well, and it's probably the biggest thing that I've learned from him, and I believe the company has sort of taken from him, his ability to turn a conversation round and really engage someone in an idea is really quite fascinating to listen to. And that absolutely is key. And it's not a sales approach. It's about really truly understanding that person and their motivations and their priorities, and being able to see the possibilities of how we can help to work towards those with them. And
Sure.
Yeah, so you're quite right. Relationships are the nuts and bolts of what we've got here.
How do you find on an actual practical level of when it comes to the delivery of these events and all of the lists that have to be checked and cross-checked in order to deliver them? How do you find working in different territories when it comes to working within different regulations, with different types of suppliers in different territories? Is it a constant sort of a battle as such to sort of be dealing, with different countries, rules, regulations, suppliers, languages?
Yes, I mean, the portfolio that we've got currently is in the US and in Germany.
Right.
And they're two very different marketplaces. And certainly when you look at Germany, it's sort of, we're starting from scratch, as it were, and it's very different rules of engagement. Again, we do lean on our partners and our relationships and people on the ground who can tell us, get us quickly to the stage where this is a familiar territory and we're not sort of finding out for ourselves. Because when you're launching events, if you spend time doing that, then you've just sort of lost all of the campaign and wasted a lot of time. So we lean on a lot of relationships, but you know, as I said, I think sort of that's the next stage with Smarter Shows. We've got to be brave and broach some really quite attractive markets for our existing portfolio that we haven't yet touched. You know, Asia and the Middle East and Africa are all sort of playing on our mind. It's quite daunting for a company of our size, based, as you say, in a relatively small, modest office in Brighton. But these are opportunities that we've really got to take hold of now.
Well, I was going to ask you about my next sort of line of discussion and conversation was going to be what the future holds, having expanded at the rate that you have done in those 8 years and developed that portfolio. What are the definitive plans, and are you able to tell us about any of the definitive plans? You mentioned very briefly that you are now maybe look to do some stuff in the UK, but in addition, you've got those international territories that you mentioned. What are the sort of the most immediate plans for you?
Well, I mean, so I'm speaking broadly when I say that I think it would be a missed opportunity to not look at those markets for our existing brands and also for stuff that we haven't launched yet. I'm certainly not at liberty to say what our launch plans are. We're planning another big launch relatively soon, but obviously we have to keep these things quite close to our chest until the time comes.
Of course, yeah.
I think there's a couple of things. It's about being of a size and of a good enough foundation now that we're able to take a bit more risk. So into unknown markets, obviously with the help of strong partners to mitigate that risk, but also into slightly broader industries. I believe, you know, the core of what we do isn't necessarily unique to advanced manufacturing engineering. We've just had a high amount of success there, and therefore we're able to use the relationships we have to launch other events in that sector. But now I believe we're of an age and of an experience whereby we can play on our experiences as event professionals and the delivery of events, and that's not unique to a particular sector. So I think we need to be a bit braver as to branching away from that core now, so that we really can take make the most of opportunities that are presented to us.
I'm keen to ask you, having looked on your website before we started recording today's podcast episode, that one of the events that you do, I think, is the Space Tech
Yes.
Expo in Pasadena in California, and I think the tagline for that is America's meeting place for space technology and engineering. Just the strapline alone has got not just my curiosity, but it excites me. How exciting is it when you've got the opportunities to actually work on something like that on a personal level? Is it,
Yeah,
are you keen to get to those?
and I mean, and not all event topics are so exciting from the strapline and from the name of it, and sometimes you'll be faced with more interesting to me is you'll be faced with what is relatively a mundane subject. And then the more you work with that community and you understand the industry, then you can suddenly, generate this passion for it that you never saw coming. Space tech is quite a sexy industry anyway, and people who aren't even involved in the industry really pay a lot of attention to it. And that's really exciting. And I was actually at our Space Tech Expo in Pasadena for the first time a few weeks ago. I've been to all of our other events and hadn't seen that before, and it really is amazing to think that you can bring together these communities of people who are doing absolutely outstanding, envelope pushing work. It's a real privilege, actually.
Absolutely, and as you said, not all of them have got wonderfully sexy, intriguing straplines and or titles, but as you say, when you delve into deeper into them, there is perhaps a level of intrigue there and a level of interest that people may not realize at the start. I know one of the shows in your portfolio is the Battery Show, and when you say that as a word, there may be people hearing, hold on, a battery show. But then when you actually think about putting it into context in people's daily lives and what we use, laptops, mobile phones, tablets, all got battery life in them. People are buying hybrid cars, electric vehicles. There's a huge push at the moment for greener, more efficient fuels and stuff like this. So actually, there is a level of intrigue when you delve deeper into them.
Absolutely, yes. It's really fascinating, and it's, as I said, it's a real privilege to be able to connect with these and just learn so much from the people that we're working with on a daily basis. And as you say, there is, even though we're firmly in the B2B event space, but the events that we're delivering have a massive impact on people's daily lives. It's just a few steps down the chain.
Is there ever a requirement at all to delve into any consumer territories at all that are linked or are closely aligned with the shows that you do?
I think that's one area that we probably aren't motivated to move towards too soon. I mean, in terms of being linked to the B2B events already, there is an element of, for example, we've considered things like and actually featured things like drive-bys at our electric vehicle event. So that there's a consumer element to that, but we're first and foremost about engaging the business communities. And so the B2C is a very different environment, as you know. The communities that we serve are quite focused and, I guess, targetable in the sense that they, you know where to find them. Whereas when you get into the B2C environment, we're talking about much bigger, broad brush marketing approach that I don't think we're sort of scaled to enter into at this point.
When you reflect back on the growth of smarter shows, the development of the actual the shows that you're operating, but the company itself, what would you say are the proudest achievements of the company and you personally in the last 8 years?
Wow. I mean, I guess I'll talk about the company mainly. I mean, it's really has been a transformation over the last 8 years. It's unrecognizable, and it's really difficult to actually think back to how it was 8 years ago, because the company has changed beyond recognition. The proudest achievements it's really difficult because I don't want to pinpoint a couple and leave any out. It's really the people that we have gathered together at Smarter Shows. That's the biggest thing for me, because they are so diverse in their skill sets and their backgrounds and their experience, but it's the way that they gel together, and in a really fun, enjoyable environment,
Sure.
to create these outstanding events. And we always, we made things difficult for ourselves. We had a really challenging schedule of 3 events back to back in May, and for a small company, that's incredibly difficult. And we decided that was going to be impossible. And then we were sort of sitting back a couple of weeks ago, reflecting on the fact that we'd delivered these events, and that was all down to people just really not being precious, getting stuck in, not feeling like their role sort of had boundaries. It really means that people have to sort of go above and beyond and really step up, and have the end goal in mind. So I think if I was to just pinpoint one thing, it would be the people here and the team. They are what makes everything happen, and that's for me the number one element of our success.
Fantastic. As we approach the end of the episode, if people are listening today and they want to find out more about you, they want to get in touch, if they've got any questions that they would like to put directly to you on a one-to-one level, how can people get in touch with you?
So the best thing, I guess, is to go to www.smartershows.com, and all of our details are there. You can contact the office. All of the team details are there, so everyone's there, and you can see the job titles of everyone. So that's how to get in touch with us.
And you guys are still based down in Brighton now?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very sunny. As soon as we get off this call, I'm going to go and meet my family on the beach. So it's a hard life.
Hey, there we go. That's what you get when you work hard. You get to reap the rewards sometimes. You get to reap the rewards. We've been talking on today's podcast to Emma Stokes. Emma is the Managing Director for Development and Infrastructure at Smarter Shows, a company that started 8 years ago but has grown rapidly, and who, and I suppose in a very unique way, a UK base, but are running shows in the US and in Germany, and finding out a little bit about their growth today, how they've developed, and what makes them tick. Emma, thank you very much for being our guest on today's podcast.
Thank you, James.
The podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Engage, powered by D2I Systems, winner of Best Event Management Platform at the 2017 Event Technology Awards. To learn how Engage can make your business more profitable, visit d2isystems.com/engage. Head over to eventindustrynews.com, and you can stay up to date with all of the latest features, news, content, and these podcasts that are being generated by Event Industry News. Find us on all the social media platforms. Just search for Event Industry News or at Event News Blog on Twitter, and you will find us in a matter of seconds. Thanks again to our guest Emma Stokes today on today's podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks very much, everyone. Goodbye.